Morning, grade fours. Good, welcome. I trust you had a nice night's sleep and that you're refreshed and ready to go for another lesson of maths. We are continuing with fractions today. We are going to need to do some workings out, so you definitely will need a pencil and some paper to write on. So if you haven't got that with you yet, please go and get some. And just while you are, I'll give you a moment to get that. I was talking yesterday about the importance of knowing your times tables. At grade 4, I think at the very least you should be quite good at your 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 times table, up to 12 times each of those. So what I'd like to do is to just first of all tell you a little story about how I learned timetables when I was at primary school. My teacher used to say to us, for homework we needed to know whichever two timetables, maybe the 5 and the 7. And the next day when we came to school, he would choose a couple of us, one at a time, to come up and stand in front of the class and recite the times table out loud. And I must say, I was terrified. I hated being in front of the class. I dreaded my name being called. So I made sure I knew my times tables. And actually, that has been really good. As I got older, I've always had decent times tables, and any of them are fine for me. So what I'd like you to do is to, first of all, make sure that you're getting the times table right. And then I'd like you to time yourself as you do one of the times tables, and then have a look or practice a little bit more, and the next day see if you can go a little bit quicker, still getting all of them right. If you are looking for help with times tables, I know there's some times table videos on YouTube which are quite good and quite fun to look at. They put pop songs with them, but yeah, you shouldn't be wasting too much time working out the times tables. Those should be at the edge of your memory. So for example, if you're doing the 7 times table, 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49, 56, 63, 70, 77, 84. Should be just as easy as that. But I'd like you to set yourself a goal. So first of all, time yourself, and then see in the coming days whether you can get quicker at that. All right, I hope all of you have your pencil and paper with you. We're going to continue having a look at fractions today, continuing where we left off from yesterday. So let's jump right in. Okay, so just a reminder, if you have any questions, either about fractions or about something else you'd like to cover in maths, or something else your teacher's doing with you and you need a little bit of help with, you're welcome to email me on grade4@worksheetcloud.com. All right. Okay, so this is our third lesson with fractions. We're first of all going to look at fraction as division. So that'll make more sense in a moment. And we're also going to look at equivalent fractions. Right, so recapping first of all what we did yesterday. We were looking at writing the same fractions with different numbers. So it's the same size piece of a whole, but we've looked at it with different numbers. We started with that. We also looked at ordering when all the numerators are the same, and then ordering if all the denominators are the same. So our goals for today: understand that fractions are another way of writing division. Then we're going to make sure that we can name fractions. And finally, we're going to compare fractions that have different numbers. So not when the denominators are all the same or the numerators are all the same. We'll have to make a change using equivalent fractions before we can really compare them. Hold on a second. Let me go back. I think we first need to go over yesterday's homework. Right, so some of this was maybe throwing you in a little bit in the deep end. Right, let's have a look at these. Open it up on my iPad quickly. All right, so first up, we wanted to organize those fractions which all have the same denominator from the biggest to smallest. Sorry, that's a mistake on my part. I've mixed up my questions. This these ones should have been up there, and those ones should have been down there. All right. Well, let's then consider, I hope that if you struggled with that, you could have emailed me, but if you'd struggled with that, your parents would have been able to pick up the error. So numerator and denominator. I guess that just goes to prove that teachers make mistakes too. All right. Okay, so in the top set, we're looking at ones that have the same numerator. So all of those numerators are 1, and we wanted to organize it from biggest to smallest. So we want to start with the biggest piece. I think that's quite easy to see that that one is going to be the biggest because it's half of the circle. Then we're going to have a look at this one. I think that would definitely be the next biggest. Over to quarters would be next. Fifths would be next. So it's always looking at which one has the biggest piece left over. So this is how we started. We started off by looking at the pictures, because pictures are easier, and then we moved from pictures to later on looking at just the numbers, which is what questions 3 and 4 were. Okay. Then having a look at the next one. This time we had the same denominator. Each of those denominators were 6, and we wanted to organize it from smallest to biggest. So this time we're going the other way around, so the least. So I definitely think this one would be the least, followed by this one, and this one, this one, this one, and this one. So again, I apologize for having made a mistake in the question. I must make sure I read over my work too. All right, let's move on to question 3. Question 3 and question 4 are very similar, so I'm not going to do both of them. I'm just going to do question 3. So it's really looking at the same questions as 1 and 2, but this time looking at the question with just numbers and no picture. All right, so let's pick a blue for writing here. Okay, we wanted to organize from smallest to biggest. All right, so we're going to start with the smallest. Now this is the one I wanted to check to see if anyone got caught out. We have 2 1/7s. All right, which means that if we're organizing them, both of those need to be put in, and they will be next to each other because they're both the same size. I hope that didn't catch anyone out. Next one would be 3/7. It's the next smallest. Then 4/7, 5/7, and finally 6/7. All right, so there's our answers. Right, let's jump back into today's lesson now that we've done looking at yesterday's homework. All right, and we're going to look at the idea that fractions are the same as division. So when I did my little example yesterday, we used Lindor balls, which are sadly all finished now, and so I can't hold them out to show you again. Right, so when I had my 6 of us, and I was sharing them amongst my 6 friends, we each ended up with 1 Lindor ball, which makes sense. Another way of writing that is I've got 6 Lindor balls. I am sharing them with 6, and I end up with 1 each. So I just wanted to show you that when you've got the whole number and you divide it by that, it's 1. But you can also write it like this. It means the same thing. And sometimes you will also see it written like this. So instead of the line in the middle like that, it will be written as a slash. It does mean the same thing. I'll always try and make sure that it's written like this. But sometimes on computers, people struggle to write it with the line in between. And so they just put a slash. But it means the same as division. So this is 6 divided by 6. And then looking at that again with my apple that I shared, where I had to cut it up. So that's 1 apple divided by 6 people. In other words, 1 shared amongst 6. We each get 1/6 of the apple. So writing it like this, we've got 1 apple divided by 6, and then we each get 1/6 of the apple. And finally, looking at the same format as this, 1/6 means 1 divided by 6. So just remember that fractions are just another way of writing division. Okay, let's go to our next slide. Put me up in the corner over there. All right. Naming fractions. So I didn't go into this yet, but I think it's important that we start naming them correctly. And we name our fractions by looking at what their denominators are. All right, so in the first one, we've got a different word, but from then onwards, we kind of just name it according to what the denominator is. So when we've got a 2 at the bottom, we call them halves. So we look at the numerator to get the first word. So we have 1, and the denominator to get the name of it. So 1/2. Or in the next case, we've got a 2 on top, so that's where our numerator is. 2/3. So you can see that the word third sounds like 3. Then we've got 3/4. Quarter starting with the same bits as quad. It's when we've got 4 pieces. So 3 comes from the numerator and quarters from the denominator. And from then on, it's pretty much just the denominator that gives us the name. So we've got 4/5, 5/6, 6/7, and 7/8. I just changed the numerator so you can see that the first word comes from the numerator and the second from the denominator. I think eighths is a lovely word, not so easy to say, but if you're ever playing hangman, I think that people might struggle to get that, unless they're watching this show. Right, so that's how we name our fractions. Okay, so now we're going on to the next thing, and this will take a little time to get. But unlike yesterday, where we either had the same denominators or the same numerators when we were trying to see which was bigger or which was smaller, now we've got a situation where we're actually not sure which is bigger and which is smaller, because we've got different numbers on the bottom. Now, some of you might realize that you'd be able to tell that 1/2 is smaller than 3/4, but I think it's really good to start with simple ones and just look at the process behind it before we sort of start just relying on the fact that we might know that halves are bigger than quarters. All right, so I'm going to jump back over to my whiteboard. I can make this small again. Oh, maybe we should just move so we're onto a new piece of the page. All right, so we were looking at 1/2. We were looking at 1/2 and 3/4. And we were trying to figure out which of those was bigger. Now we can draw them. All right, so just for fun, I'm going to draw these. Let me draw them down here. I'm going to choose to draw squares. You can draw any shape you like. It doesn't matter. I'm only using squares because the lines on the page and it helps me to draw them. All right, so first up, we're looking at halves, right, because we've got a 2 at the bottom. And the next one, we're looking at quarters because we've got a 4 at the bottom. Okay, so in the first one, we have 1/2. And in the next one, we have 1, 2, 3/4. And so it's quite easy to see that actually the one on the right, this one is the bigger of the 2. Right. And that's easy to see and it's easy to draw. But what if we had numbers like 73 over 86, and we were comparing that with 95 over 103. That would be a little bit harder. And so we're not going to work that one out, but what we want to do is to just use the formula so we can understand with numbers. So first up, to compare them properly, we really want to make them into the same thing. And what I can see over here, if I look down at my 1/2, was that if I did that and made it into quarters, I'd quite clearly be able to see that this on the left was 2/4 and this on the right was 3/4. And then I would be able to tell, okay, well, the denominators are now the same and 3 is bigger than 2, so then the one on the right is definitely the bigger one. Okay, but how do we do that with the numbers? Right, well, as you can see down here, we've managed to get the same number at the bottom. So I think I'm going to try and change the one on the left, the half, into quarters, looking at the numbers. So I'm going to leave my 3/4 as unchanged. I'm just going to put it there, right? And now I'm going to focus on the one on the left. Okay, so I've got to ask myself, what did I do to a 2 to turn it into a 4? I can times it by 2. All right, so I'm trying to turn this one into whatever this one is, the same as each other. All right, in the next example, we'll work the other way around. Okay, so I times it by 2 to get it to 4. Now you're about to witness the closest I will ever get to being on Idols, and that is almost singing in front of a screen. My past pupils know this. They always sing it back to me when we do it. But it goes like this. With fractions, what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. What you do to the top, you do to the bottom. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Right, and what that means practically is over here, where I have times the bottom by 2, and now I times the bottom by 2, I also need to times the top by 2 in order to keep the fraction the same. And I end up with 2/4, which you can see is shown in the picture, 2/4. And it's very easy to see now which is bigger between 2/4 and 3/4. You can see, if you remember your crocodiles, your relationship signs, you can see that 3/4 is definitely bigger than 2/4. Okay. Now I'm going to move my screen down a bit. Move my screen down a bit. I'm going to go back to my slides because we are going to look at another one. Right, let's play a game called Would You Rather? Okay, so I'm going to ask each of you, would you rather have half a pizza or 5/8 of a pizza? Now, the reality is for some of you, the answer is going to be different for others because not everyone likes pizza. So if you didn't like pizza, you'd want the smaller one. If you did like pizza, you'd want the bigger one. But the point of what we're doing is really just to be able to work out which of those is bigger and which of them is smaller. And then you can make your decision about which one you'd rather have. So we are going to look at half a pizza, and we're going to look at 5/8 of a pizza, and we're going to have a look to see which one is bigger. Right, so on our whiteboard, here we have it. We have a half a pizza, and we have 5/8 of a pizza. All right, now I'm going to draw it down at the bottom. This is probably the last time I'm going to draw one for now. And then afterwards, we'll just do it with the numbers. So I guess it's a pizza, so we have to make it round. That's about as round as my drawing will go. We'll pretend it's round. And on this side, I will also draw a sort of a round pizza. We can pretend they look exactly the same. Okay, so we look at our denominator to see how many pieces to make it. 2, and on this side we're going to have to make it into 8 pieces. You also probably have never had a purple pizza. I definitely haven't. Okay, so in the one on the left we have half, so we're going to color in 1 because our numerator is 1, and in the other one we're going to color in 5 because our numerator is 5. All right, and I think it's quite easy to see that the one on the right, 5/8 of pizza, is definitely bigger than 1/2 of a pizza. All right, and yeah, so you can see which one you would rather have. Okay, so now let's look at the numbers. Okay, so we can look at the 2 and the 8. We need to make them the same. I can see that I can do something to the 2 to make it into an 8. Can you see what you'd have to do? What would you times it by to get to an 8? Well, I hope your 2 times table is good enough to realize that you're going to times that by 4 and Sing it with me at home. What you do to the bottom, you do to the top. All right, so if we times the bottom by 4, we also have to times the top by 4. I see my screen is not quite keeping up. There we go. All right, okay. So we're going to look and say, well, if we take 4 times 1 or 1 times 4, we get 4 on top. If we take 2 times 4, we get 8 at the bottom. All right, and with 4 over 8, we can now compare that with the 5 over 8. And we can definitely see, like the picture, that because the denominator is the same, we can just look at the numerators and we can see that this one on the right is more pizza than on the left. So if you like pizza, then you're going to say you would rather have 5/8 of the pizza. And if you don't like pizza, then you will say you rather have half a pizza. Right? Okay, so that was the first would you rather. Okay, next one, we're going to ask, would you rather have 5/6 of an hour? Would you rather run for 5/6 of an hour, or would you rather run for 2/3 of an hour? I guess, again, it depends on whether you like running or not. Let's go have a look at our whiteboard. Okay, we'll move it over just a little bit. Right, this time I'm not going to draw it. I'm just going to look at the numbers. So, if I look at my 6 and my 3, and I know I need to make them into the same to really compare them. This time it's the other way around. It's the one on the right-hand side that's smaller, and I think I can see something that I would times 3 by to make it into 6. Can you think of it? I hope you got 2. And what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. All right, so using a different color, our bottom number now becomes 6, which you can see is what we wanted. Our top number becomes 4, and now we can quickly compare very easily, and we can see that 4/6 of an hour is less than 5/6 of an hour. So depending on whether you like running or not, if you like running, your answer would be this is what you would rather, 5/6 of an hour. And if you don't like running, then your answer would be this. You're going to say 4/6 of an hour. 4/6 of an hour. Right. Back over here. Right. Let's do one or two more quickly. All right. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a few sips of my coffee. I'm going to let you get going on these ones. You're going to try these ones without me first. And then, so I'll give you a couple of minutes with each one. You're going to see which one of those is bigger. And then I'll work through them with you. If you'd like to draw them, you can. If you'd like to just use the numbers and what you do to the bottom, you do to the top, you can do that. It doesn't matter whether you're drawing or just using the numbers or both. All right, so I'll give you a couple of minutes. Let's say 2 minutes, so 1 minute for each, and then I'll start working through with it. Remember, if you don't get it, it's not a problem. This is about learning, not about getting things right. We've got about a minute to go still. Just check if there's any emails. Right, 10 seconds left. Just while you're finishing up, I'm going to switch over to my whiteboard. All right, this is the blue block. That's the one where we're working. Okay, so we need to make both of our denominators the same. If I have a look at this, I notice that I can do something to a 4 to make it into an 8. All right, I can times it by 2. And what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Right, just a quick note. When I say what you do to the bottom and what you do to the top, when we're looking at fractions, the only things you can do, what you can do, are only times and divide. So all of the ones we've looked at so far have been times. Right? You can't say, well, I'm going to plus. Unfortunately, you're only allowed to use times and divide. Right? So I have been leading towards just using times. But yeah, times or divide, I'm not going to give you any with division for now, just with timesing. Okay, so our denominator, 4 times 2 is 8. Our numerator, 3 times 2 is 6. We can definitely see that 6 over 8 is less than 7 over 8. Right. Okay, so 6 over 8 less than 7 over 8, which means that 3 over 4 is less than 7 over 8. Because these two things on the left, these two fractions, are different ways of saying the same thing. If you're not sure of that, let me quickly draw it for you. So 3 over 4. I'm going to show you without doing another one, so I'm just changing color. All I'm going to do is make these blocks half the size. And now you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 over 8. So 3 over 4 is equal to 6 over 8. It's the same thing written in a different way. Right. Moving over to the second one on the right hand side there. Let me just shift my screen here so it makes it. There we go. Now we were comparing these to see which of the two was bigger. Right, this time I'm noticing that we can do something to the 3. Remember, only times or divide. This time is going to be times. If I times that by 2, I will get to 6. And what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So my numerator will become 4, 2 times 2. My denominator will become 6. 3 times 2. Right, so 4 over 6 and 5 over 6. I can definitely see that this one is the bigger of the two. So depending if you were looking for the bigger or the small one, you can now compare. All right. That's quite a lot of stuff to take in one lesson. And that is, in fact, as far as we're going to go for this lesson. So let's finish off by looking at the final slide. And just a reminder that the homework is available in the link just above the video. And also, if you have any questions, please email me on grade4@worksheetcloud.com. Have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you tomorrow for some more work. Goodbye.